Let's go. We are live with the vent. Welcome in. We are back. Last week we were in the vent vestibule chatting during the VP debate, during the vice presidential debate. This week we are back and in action on camera, on YouTube, on Instagram, on Facebook, and I am so excited to be with you again for another Tuesday night chat. If this is your first time coming into the vent, welcome into the room. We are valuing all voices. So no matter what your viewpoint may be, what your perspective is, what your experiences have been, we welcome you to join the chat. So, talk to us in the comments. Welcome other people in to talk alongside us, as well as just listen in. Some people come in and they just listen, and we love that because it's all about community. Hey, Lena. Hey, Shop Drop Thrifts. Welcome in, y'all. Hey, Reby. I'm so excited because we're back this week on live. Last week, again, we were in the vent vestibule. We were doing a little chat during the VP debate. This week, we're starting a new series. The vent is a safe space to speak again. So no matter where you may come from, background, economic background, political background, spiritual background, you are welcome into this space. So thank you for coming in, whether you're joining us on Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube. Welcome. You are free to drop your city, your state in the chat. So we know that we have people joining us from all over in Virginia. We have people in the Midwest. We have people on the West Coast. We have people all up and down the Eastern Seaboard. So we also want to say that we are definitely praying for Florida and any other areas that may be affected by the Hurricane Milton. So we are praying for you, hoping that you're able to get to a safe area, as well as your family. If you have family in that area, we're praying that they're able to be somewhere safe and find a safe space to ride the storm out at. So thank you for joining us. Tonight's kickoff is Into the Deep. So during this month of October, we will be exploring what it looks like. Many of us may be in transition. Many of us may be trying to look forward to what do I want my life to look like moving forward. Some of us may be making some relationship decisions, job decisions, life decisions. You may feel like it's time for you to start something new or transition into something else, or you just don't know, right? And that could be overwhelming. So since that can be overwhelming, and since it can be hard to make decisions, since life happens and sometimes you don't know which way to go, how to see beyond maybe where you are right now because it's difficult or so great, you don't know that it could get better. So we want to talk about that tonight. So we're talking into the deep. So not just looking at the surface of things, but going beyond the surface, taking a deep dive into how we can move forward no matter what our situation is. So y'all know it's always a question, right? We do this intro and there's always a question. There's always something that I want to ask you. Hey, C, because it's a community conversation. So first question, as we look at this, seeing, speaking beyond where you are right now, because words have power. Your ability to envision where you can be has power. And then not only that, we want you to be able to sustain it. And often, though, we have to take kind of a look back before we can go forward. We talked about Sankova in some previous episodes, but one thing I would love to hear from y'all tonight is what's one thing that you've learned from your past struggles that has helped you see, I can't read, y'all, and I wrote the question. What's one thing you've learned from your past struggles that has helped you see beyond the challenges you face today? So that's similar to like, what is a life lesson that you learn that helps you get through? We go through things, right? Things happen. Every day isn't a great day. Every moment isn't the best moment or our best moment. But often we have some wisdom, we have some words, we have some people in our life that has taught us something to help us overcome, or we've overcome something already, right? I learned this from a past occurrence. So now I'm able to push forward because I know this. The biggest things, Can y'all hear me? I think one of the biggest things for me is knowing that it can sound very cliche, right? But one of these things that people use is you've made it through every bad day, right? So while I may have some bad days, while I may have some challenging days, I'm here now. So that means that every bad day I've had, I've made it through. So I may be sitting at a bad day or an intersection that doesn't look great, or I may be at what feels like a stop sign, or I may be trying to figure out which way to go at a fork in the road, right? But because I've made it through some challenges before, because I've made it over obstacles before, because I've pushed through pain before, I can now push forward because I have this wisdom to take with me. So what are some things that you've had? Lena said maximize the waiting season. Just don't sit there. Prepare for what you're praying for in the wait. That's really good, Lena. And one of the great things about that, right, about maximizing the waiting season is you know where you want to go. So you have the time to prepare yourself, like you said, prepare for what you're praying for. And that can look like different things depending on where you are, right? If you're preparing for a new job, you can sharpen your skills, you can network with people, you can get the credentials before it's time, right? Because if somebody hires you, let's say you are a hairdresser, right? I'm just throwing this out there. You're a cosmetologist. If a job opening becomes available at a salon, you don't wait for the job opening to become available to get your license, because your license takes time to get, right? So if you know that if I want to be a cosmetologist, I know that I have to go to cosmetology school, and I have to get, I have to go through courses and take a license in order to get that job. But in that waiting season, while maybe I'm not ready for the job yet, I'm getting the skills and the certifications ready for it, right? The same way maybe with relationships, right? While I'm waiting or while I'm preparing for the relationship, I analyze myself. What are some things that I want to work on? What's something that I really want? What kind of relationship do I really, am I looking forward to? What are some things that I'm willing to accept? What are some things that are non-negotiable? I need to know that before I get into that space, right? And let me be clear, you don't know everything all the time, but you have some type of baseline of how do I do that? How do I deal with my anger? How do I deal with communication? How do I deal with all these things so that I have some type of self-awareness as I enter into something with someone else, right? If I'm starting a business, you don't do the business plan and then you open up the next day. You have a plan, and then there are steps, right? You have to get certain things through the government, through the SCC, and depending on if you got a nonprofit, you got to get board members. You don't do that after the fact. That's something you do as you're preparing to open, as you're preparing to start. So you want to be ready and not just getting ready as it's happening. Right? Prepare. I don't have it yet, but these are some practical things I can do as I prepare for it. Thank you for sharing that, Lena. And anybody else that wants to comment, again, we are open. So even if we start talking about something else and you like, wait a minute, I really wanted to say this about that, drop it in the comments because we want to hear what you have to say. There's nothing that is off limits here. Evelina said there's nothing like getting your heart's desire after waiting for so many years, only to realize you wasted your time while waiting. No preparation. Absolutely. If you know there's something that you need, you have to prepare, because if you're frustrated after you get it because you can't sustain it, right? We're talking about speaking, seeing, and sustaining. If you can't sustain it, it is often because we didn't prepare properly for it, right? So we want to be able to do that, right? I want a boat. And this is something I'm going to be very transparent with y'all, right? I want a boat. But I still ain't got my boating license. I was supposed to get my boating license when I turned 30. I was supposed to get it. So now that's 3 years ago. I was supposed to get my boating license. So if somebody gave me a boat today, I would not be able to drive the boat. And I feel some type of way about it. So I need to get on top of things to prepare. So when that person gives me the boat, right, I'm like, oh yeah, let's go. I'm ready. Like, I got my license. I'm ready to go. Right. I don't have the boat yet, but I got the license. So when I get the boat, I'm ready to go. But I have to do my part, which is I have to go to the class and get the lessons so that when it comes, I'll be ready. Right. And if anybody want to give me a boat, you won't have to wait long. Like, go ahead. I'm going to be ready because I'm getting my license soon. The next thing, so we have like 3 quick things, right, as we're going through this. And of course, y'all know it's always we always got some points because we want to keep this in a way that we can all receive it and take something with us, right? No matter if you only get one part of it, whatever you need, take what you need. So part of going into the deep is seeing beyond the now. We kind of talked about that as we look into the past, because we want to be very clear. There's this delicate balance between going forward, moving forward, planning for what's ahead. If I'm pausing, can y'all tell me? Because my screen just went out a little bit. If I'm pausing, please let me know. There's this delicate balance between where I'm going, what I'm reaching for, what I'm trying to attain, the goals that I have, and also having wisdom and foundation from your past, right? So I see what's happening now. I know the lesson that I've learned, and I'm also moving forward. So there's a delicate balance there. And y'all, it's always a quote, right? So one of the great quotes that kind of go along with that for me, and I'm sure there are plenty of them, but Stacey Abrams, politician, y'all know she ran in Georgia, and also she led this great voting rights initiative. I was part of this great voting rights initiative to advocate for people to have accessibility. She said, we can't win the future if we don't fight for the present. So what does that mean? As we talk, it was a brief pause. Okay, thank you, Evelina. I'm going to keep an eye on that. Thank you. As we look at moving forward, as we look at going beyond what we see right ahead of us, we also have to take into account that if we don't make the most, that's why we kind of started with looking back at lessons that we learned. If we don't make the most of what we have right now, it is hard to win in the future, right? So if I don't train now, it's hard for me to win the 5K, right? I'm not a runner. I'm sorry. But if I don't train, if I don't eat right, if I don't stretch, if I don't condition, it's hard for me to win the 5K. Right. So in the same way, and this is more politically driven, but I think that it fits across the board. In the same way that you can't, it's difficult for you to win the 5K if you've never ran in your life, you never conditioned, you never trained, you never worked out. It's going to be difficult for you to fight for it, right? But you have to fight for the present. Meaning you have to prepare now. We have to have the vision now. You have to put things into place now so that in the future you can win. A lot of our conversation, because it is election season, because it is a lot of things going on in our country right now, some of our conversations are more politically related. But if we don't do things now, right, like if let's say Rosa Parks or any civil rights activist, if they didn't do what they did in the present, we wouldn't be able to have certain things accomplished now that we're in the future, right? So if I didn't, let's say you have a training or degree, if I didn't get the degree then, right, if I don't fight for it now, it's going to be hard in the future for me to get past certain boundaries, right? If we don't fight for equal rights now, it's going to be hard in the future for anybody to attain anything. Y'all know my girl Shirley Chisholm. If Shirley Chisholm didn't run and her what was her present, it'd be hard for a Black woman, a woman of color, a woman to run on a major ticket in what is now the future, right? So if we don't fight for what we can now, if we don't make changes now, if we don't put in the work now, it's hard to win the future. It's hard to win a basketball game and you don't know how to dribble, right? It's hard. Hey, Xavier, it's hard to pass a test that you didn't study for, right? It's hard. So you have to fight in the present, and you have to fight past negative thought patterns. You have to fight past getting caught up in overthinking, right? I had a conversation with somebody today, and she was like, I'm just hitting resistance. I'm hitting resistance because I'm trying this and I'm trying to do this, but I'm not getting through to people. And it's awkward. It's turning into awkward conversations, right? And my thing was, okay, look at the tools that you have right now, and you can use this in your next conversation. Switch some things, reframe some things, move some things around. You got what you need, but you may have to switch it up some. And for many of us, that may be what it is, right? You got the tools, but maybe you're not using them. Or you have the information, but you're kind of sitting on it. You know, it's like that piece where it's like, I want to change, but if we don't start taking some type of action, it's more than us just seeing it and just saying it. It's us now making up ways to sustain it, meaning I have to take some type of action. So I have to condition myself. I have to write affirmations on my wall. I have to start saying positive things to myself. I have to start listening to positive people and people that push me forward. I have to be careful of what I'm doing in the present, because if I'm not doing the right things presently, or if I'm not doing what's going to help push me forward now, when I get to that point, I ain't gonna be ready, right? Imagine me trying to fight like Floyd Mayweather. I ain't never trained as no boxer. I think he retired now, but at any rate, I never trained as a boxer, right? So me trying to be like, oh, I'm Friday, me and Floyd, we're going head to head. That would be absolutely crazy, being that I've never trained for that, right? So it's just that delicate balance of, okay, this is where I am, but I may have to reframe thoughts. I may have to break down some things, and that's okay, right? We may have to unlearn some things, tell some people, cut some people off. That's okay too. But you have to do it so that you are able to move forward and be able to win in the future. You might have to make some sacrifices now, right, to win in the future. And that's okay, because life is not just what's happening now, but it's also what will happen, what is coming, what we are stretching towards. So, absolutely. Evelina said, right, the vision. Absolutely. Hey, Taquan. It's hard to pass the test you didn't study for. Absolutely. Reprogramming. Yeah. Piece of the pie. Yes. Reprogramming, reframing, shifting things, and not being hard on yourself if you don't get it right the first time. If you have to shift the way you think, if you have to change, that's not overnight. And if it takes time, that's okay. Just know that in your present, you are working on it. So that's how you win your future, by working on it right now and giving yourself the grace and giving yourself the time to do it. Hey, Tony. I'm glad you're enjoying it, Xavier. So we got to fight for that. We have to fight for that, because we owe it to ourselves, and we owe it to those who we have influence over. And if, again, chime in at any time. This is a communal conversation, so I might be on the screen. This is a communal conversation, y'all. So I want to hear from you. So here's a question. So understanding that today's challenges are very real. We will never make that smaller than what it is. I would never tell you, no, it don't matter what you got going on. It does matter, because things hurt, things can slow you down, things can cause you pain mentally, physically, emotionally. So we don't want to overlook that, but we also want to understand that what you have overcome, what you may still be struggling with, what may still be challenging for you, is very real, but it doesn't define what you can be. So it doesn't define your future. So right now I may be in this space. Right now I may not have the money. Right now I may not have the education. Right now I may not have the credentials. Right now I may not have the job. Right now I may not have the networking and the reach. But it doesn't matter. That doesn't mean that I can't have it. It just means that it's not present right now. Right. So as you think about that, and the things that you're reaching for, the things you're trying to attain, the things that you're trying to get to, how can you look deeper and see potential for growth and success? And I think that goes back to what Tal was talking about reprogramming. So if we're reprogramming, if we're reframing, how do you see beyond right now? So what are some things practically, on a more spiritual side as well? How do you look deeper? So it says, how can we? But I would like to know, just even on a personal level, if anyone has anything they want to share, as far as when you see the challenges, and the challenges are very real, how do you see beyond what's happening right now and pick out those bright spots? We know there are barriers and there are bright spots, right? There are things that hold us back, and there are things we look forward to. There's this darkness, but there's also this light. So what do you use to look deeper to see, okay, it's potential in this. I can grow from this. I can still succeed from this. What are some things that you do? I know one thing, and I want to hear from you. So what are some things that you do to see potential and growth, and see yourself succeeding? So for some people, Evelina mentioned writing the vision. So you may write what you want. You may write your plans down. Some people record themselves saying certain things. For me, I analyze situations. I'm very reflective and analytical. So I look at what's happening, and I try to determine, okay, this is what I have control over. This is what I don't. And then I look at, okay, now that I know what I have control over and what I don't have control over, I can figure out what I can do. So if that means that I have to move forward and let some things go, I look at what that looks like practically. If I have to say no to some things, I look at what that looks like practically. How does that affect me financially? How does that affect me mentally? How does that affect me emotionally? How does that affect me spiritually? One other thing that I do is I pause, because a lot of times we can make decisions very quickly. Again, based on temporary situations, we make quick decisions, right? So I might be upset right now. I might be sad right now. I might just be hungry. Like I might just be tired, right? So I pause. Like, is this a real decision I want to make moving forward? Or am I feeling this way just right now in this moment, right? So my potential for growth looks like, okay, wait a minute, let me pause. Especially because I'm reflective and I need time to think about stuff sometimes. I'm like, okay, let me pause. Now, is my decision being informed because I'm upset, because I'm tired, because I'm angry, because I haven't eaten yet? Because another situation has me upset, so it's affecting what's going on here? Or am I making a logical decision because things, the math ain't math and things not adding up? This doesn't make sense. That's not the best decision. Maybe that's going to put me in a position where I'm being taken away from my family more than I would like. Or maybe that's going to put me in a position where the money is good, but the work-life balance isn't there. Or maybe this decision will take me out of alignment for what I want to do, right? Because some opportunities are great, but if they're not in line with what you want to do, it could be a great opportunity, but not a great opportunity for you, because it's really going to take you off track versus keeping you on track. Right? Lena said, I tell myself I may not be where I want to be right now, but I think about how far I've come to help me see the growth in the midst of the wait. Absolutely. I live by that. You have to celebrate. Thank you, Evelina, for saying that. I live by that. I might not be where I want to be yet, but you have to celebrate the small wins. You have to celebrate the daily wins. You have to celebrate the hourly wins. You have to celebrate what people say are small wins. You have to celebrate those, because if not, you're doing, and you're not giving yourself credit because you haven't reached that point, but you have reached some points along the way, right? You have made progress and you have to do it. We talked about races earlier. Not a runner, not a racer. However, there are checkpoints in races, right? Where you see how far you've gone and you get to this checkpoint and people have water and apple slices or, whatever for you to let you know you're not at the finish line yet, but you are making progress. Here goes some water. You have to celebrate those small wins along the way and not wait until the end, because if not, you'll just be going through the process and not really taking into account like, yo, I'm growing. I've learned this along the way. Because what is it? It's like the destination. It's not the destination, it's the journey, right? The journey is the destination. That's what it is, right? So all the things you pick up along the way are what make impact. Like, we'll get there, and that's important too. But all the things you pick up along the way make such big impact. A lot of us have learned so many lessons before we got to what we wanted, right? And maybe we're on to the next thing. But as you were going along the way, you learned things, you picked up new skills, you networked with people, you learned things about yourself, because it was part of the journey to help you push forward. Xavier said, my saying in situations is that it's a bad chapter, not a bad book. Turn the page and keep. That is so good. It's just a chapter. So if you stop in that chapter, you don't get to the rest of the book. The book, like with every story and every plot, there is this climax. There's this, you go through these different parts of the story, the plot, the climax. You reach all these things. But if you stop at the part where there's tension, you don't get to see what happens and what the protagonist, you don't get to see all that because you stopped before you got to it. Yes, it's a bad chapter. Like, this chapter wasn't the best. But when I turn the page, it's a new chapter. It's something different now happening. Thank you for sharing that. Piece of the Power with Ty said, I meditate and envision my higher self. Or if it's a problem I'm facing, I envision how the problem can be resolved in my favor and what it looks like. That's so good. Again, that is right in line with seeing. You have to see, right? Before you get there, you have to see where you want to be. So meditating, puts you in a place where you can see, envisioning, whether you're sleeping, whether you're awake, whether you close your eyes, whether you journal, whether you draw it, whether you doodle, whatever it is that you do. Envisioning is a way to put you in that space before you get there and help you. It's problem solving. It's people think of it as it's very spiritual, yes, but it's also very logical to see, okay, what are the best ways that I can figure this out, right? It gives you options along the way. Thank you for sharing that. That is so, so true. So we got a lot of input on that. So again, if you're in here and you've been thinking or you're not sure, take what you need from what people have said. You know, it's not a bad chat. It's not a bad book. It's just not the best chapter, right? Envision, meditate. Also, you have to track your progress and not just wait until you get to that big goal, but celebrate the small wins along the way. So thank you for sharing that. The second thing is speaking truth to power. So we hear this a lot. I'm sure I probably say this almost every Tuesday. Speaking truth to power, what does that look like? Speaking truth to power looks like calling out things that we know aren't right. It looks like being honest about what's happening, but also what can be, right? We talk about that a lot up here. Like, I realize what's going on, but I also know that reality can shift and that things can change through the actions of even just a few people, right? Many movements, whether it's for rights, human rights, whether it was to change things and stop things from happening in people's neighborhoods, whether it was to shift things in school systems, was started because somebody realized what reality was. They spoke against what was happening, and then they took action, right? So because action is taken, one of the quotes I look at is one of my favorite preachers, womanist theologians in the world, Reverend Dr. Vernita Weems. And this is a quote from her. It says, "The task of the prophet is to speak the unspeakable, to tell the truth about the present, and to remind us of the future that we must prepare for." So a lot of times when we think about prophets, we think about people that, speak into your life and tell the future. When we look at people, speakers, and people, like the best person I can think that's like universally known is Martin Luther King Jr., right? He was prophetic in the sense of not necessarily I'm gonna tell you your future, but prophetic in the way of, this is what's happening. There may not be a whole bunch of other people speaking against this in a loud way on public platforms, but I'm going to speak against the system. I'm going to speak against the machine. I'm going to speak against whatever, right? I'm going to tell the truth about it because this is the picture that's being painted, right? Separate but equal, right? I'm a history teacher, y'all, so it's probably going to always go back to history, right? What the picture that's being painted, right, is separate but equal. The reality is separate but equal is not what's happening. So we're going to speak about it, right? Brown v. Board of Education. We're going to speak about it. We're going to tell you about it. But then we also going to take steps so that our future looks different, right? So this is what's happening. This is what they're trying to paint the picture to look like to us. But this is what's actually going on, right? This is the prophetic part of it. This is what's happening. This is the truth of the matter that's happening right now. And this is how we prepare moving forward. We march, we sit in, we protest, we talk to legislators, we come together in groups, we start our own organizations. We are the Black Panthers. We're feeding people during breakfast program. This is what we're doing to prepare for the future. We're putting things into place practically. We're speaking it. We're putting it into place so that things could be sustained, right? I hope that makes sense. I hope I explained it the way that it's in my head, I'm saying it to y'all, right? So it's prophetic in the sense of everybody may not have this stance and everybody may not be bold enough to say it, but I'm going to speak it and I'm going to call it out. And then I'm going to remind you that we're preparing for what can be. And we're preparing for the future that we want our children to have and those who we have influence over to have. And we don't want the people that maybe come behind us to have the same struggles that we have. So we're going to make some changes, or we're going to call on those who have the power to make change, or we're going to put people in power to make change. However, that works for each of us, right? So that is along those lines. So along those lines, have you ever been in a situation where you felt like you had to speak up? So this could be at work, this could be in your family, this could be in your community, this could be for yourself personally, right? Have you ever been in a situation you felt like you had to speak up, but it was hard? And how did you handle it? So you may have been speaking up for yourself or for another person. You may have been speaking up for a younger sibling or for a cousin or for an auntie or for an elderly family member. You may have been speaking out for a certain group of people. Or you may have been speaking out at work, like, you know what, I understand, but maybe this isn't best practice, right? Or maybe you're doing part of a community organization where you're like, okay, everybody's agreeing, but I kind of have a different opinion. I don't know if I want to say something or not because I know y'all might be side-eyeing me. Right? And thanks for tagging people, Lena. So have any of you had to speak up in a situation and, make your voice heard or point out some things that may not have been right? And what was the result, or how did you handle it? Or even what would you have done possibly differently, right? For many of us, we look back like, okay, maybe I could have handled that different. Maybe I should have said something different. Or maybe, I did the right thing and I'm proud of it. And I don't have any regrets about it. I will say from my standpoint, as you think about it, one of the things that I always advocate is for my patients. I work as a hospice chaplain, and I am really big on advocating for my patients. So if something is going on in the facility or even in the patient's home that does not seem to be benefiting them or is causing them harm or discomfort, I speak to a family member. We had a situation where we have had to call APS, and it can be difficult because it can cause some tension, right? But also, my thing is, I never want to look back and say, I wish I would have called, or I wish I would have said something. I'm going to advocate for people every time because part of it's because I don't want it on my conscience where, man, I knew something was wrong and I didn't say anything. The other part of it is I look at it like, what if this was my family member and they were being treated unfairly, or they weren't getting the proper care? I would want somebody who was able to advocate for them and to correct something that may not be going well. So those can, and again, it can, because you don't know what the response will be. You don't know what relationships may suffer or shift because of you saying something. But I always encourage people, and depending on the situation, right? So you also want to do it safely. So depending on the situation, it can be hard, but you want to analyze even what it looks like. If I do say something, or if I do something, what you also want to weigh the consequences or the reactions of it. Okay, so I don't want to put anybody into danger, so maybe I go about it this way, so you have to even be careful with it. But there are many situations where we may have to speak up, and we have to see the best route to do that. And sometimes it's easier said than done. Most of the time, or every time, it's probably easier said than done. But it's necessary, because if we don't say anything, things just continue to be the way that they are. Yep. So thank y'all for sharing that. And to kind of round that out, as we kind of, again, we're coming up on election season. I don't want to be overbearing with it, but I do want to say part of that is also looking at it as a whole and from a policy standpoint. This quote from Barbara Jordan says, "What the people want is very simple. They want an America as good as its promise." And that kind of goes back into where we kind of talked about sometimes things are presented to us one way, but it's not the reality, right? When I think about like Virginia, I think about like things like No Child Left Behind. It's presented one way, or it was presented one way, but then if you worked in the educational system, you understood that it was presented one way, but that wasn't necessarily the truth, right? So we want to look at being honest and look at what it truly can be, as well as what it's trying to say that it is. I'm gonna have to grab my charger, y'all. I thought I had it. Let's see if Chris will bring it to me. So the next thing is when we consider that words create worlds. So as we talk about speaking truth to power, as we talk about what it looks like for our world to be one place or one way, and what is said to be is something different. Our words create worlds. So we look at it on a larger scale. We look at politics. We look at education system. We look at our community, but also on a very personal level, right? How you talk to yourself. Thank you. Can you plug it in for me, please? How you talk to yourself, how you communicate with other people, how you see yourself, creates your world. So if you wake up in the morning and you're like, it is just gonna be a terrible day, guess what? It is just gonna be. Thank you, baby. You saying it here? No. Okay. Why? I'm just asking. You can if you want to. Bye. So if you wake up in the morning and you say it's gonna be a terrible day, it's probably gonna be a terrible day because you've already spoken that it's gonna be a terrible day. So your mind, you're now training your mind to look for every bad thing that could possibly happen. Anybody ever had a day like that? You woke up, it was raining, it was cold, the sun won't shine, and you were like, oh, it's just not gonna be a good day, right? So now you've already declared it's not gonna be a good day. So you're now training your mind to look for it not to be a good day, right? So your words now have created this world based on what you said. So one thing, as we kind of already kind of touched on this, is your words create your world, but also reframing. So you wake up and say it's gonna be a good day, I feel good. And again, easier said than done, but it shifts your brain, right? To where you get stuck in traffic, instead of being like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna be late, right? Your brain turns to, well, me now being stuck here may have prevented me from being in the accident up there, or it may have prevented me from something that I didn't even know was gonna happen, right? So you're now shifting, reprogramming, reframing, so that your reality now shifts. So one person could say, oh, it's going to be a terrible day, and they will point out every bad thing that could possibly happen. But the reality is, if they would have just shifted, they could have pointed out the bright spots also in that day. So yeah, I might have missed this meeting, but I did have a great conversation with someone, right? So there was some highlight in that day. Well, maybe I didn't get the promotion, but it's these other things worn out. Maybe there's a new job opportunity in another department, right? So I didn't promote here, but I shifted here, and it may not be a promotion how I thought it was gonna come, but now I'm making more money, and I'm spending less time at work, and I'm in a totally different department, right? So it's like, now I'm speaking things and I'm saying things to myself, about myself, affirmations. All these things create the world that you build around yourself. And it's really big on how you view yourself. So how you view yourself also affects that, because it determines what you say to yourself and how you think about yourself, right? So for many of us, it may be reframing how do you talk to you? Like the voice in your head. What does the voice in your head sound like? What is the voice in your head, right? And I mean that in a loving way, right? We say we have thoughts, right? So what does the voice in your head sound like? What kind of things are you saying to yourself? How are you viewing yourself? How are you encouraging yourself? Or are you tearing yourself down, right? Like, what kind of reality are you making for yourself? And that, as much as it may not seem like a big thing, the voice you hear the most of the time, the voice you hear the most is your own. So you have to consider, what are you saying to you about you as you go throughout each day, because that's going to make a big difference on how your world looks. And then lastly, our last thing is sustaining ourselves. So we talked about seeing, so being able to envision, where do I want to go? What do I want? What am I reaching for? Excuse me. We talked about speaking, how we speak out against wrongs, how we speak out against things that are being presented and it's not necessarily truthful. We also talked about how we speak to ourselves. So what does the voice in my head sound like? What am I saying to me? Like, what's happening with that? And then the last thing is sustaining. So going into the deep is sustaining. So I want to say these things, I want to make these plans, but we also want to sustain that. So we want to be able to keep that going, right? And not just be a one-time thing and then we just forget all about it. So sustaining ourselves looks like self-care. Part of that is self-care. So sustaining is, how am I taking care of myself? So I would like to hear from you all, because we've talked about self-care multiple times. So I'm counting on the fact that you have some self-care tips for the group, right? So if you want to share, and you can do more than one, you can definitely do more than one. But if you could share one way you practice self-care when things get tough. So how do you care for yourself in difficult situations? How do you care for yourself when you face challenges? How do you care for yourself in opposition? How do you care for yourself when the conditions aren't ideal? How do you care for yourself? What do you do for you when it's not optimum, when the situation is not optimal? What do you do for yourself when you're stressed? What do you do for yourself when it's not the best day? What do you do for yourself when you're frustrated? Right? Whatever that box is, whatever that may be for you, what do you do for yourself in those moments when it can be a little bit more challenging and you're not in the best mood and you're not in the best headspace and you're not feeling, 100% yourself physically? What do you do? Can you share with us? I would like to know, because maybe this is a space where someone else can take what you said and they can try it, right? And that may become a self-care practice for them. Some of the things that I do as you're typing, as you're kind of gathering your thoughts, some of the things I do is take quiet time. So I'll sit in a car and just be quiet. No radio, no phone calls, no music, no podcast, just quiet to kind of center my brain and just give myself a mental break. Another thing that I do is, excuse me, another thing that I do is I love water. And my mom does this too. I'll go sit by the water. So I sit by the water and just listen. It's something so calming for me personally about like hearing like the water splash, hearing the waves. So even during my, I try to plan little sabbaticals throughout the year. So in December, I usually go to the beach, right? And I get a room and you can just hear the waves splashing all day, all night. And that is just so soothing. And I've actually researched it's something about like salt water that helps regulate your system and calms you and all these benefits. So I just sit on the porch, I'll get a blanket and lay on the beach and just listen to the waves crash. I like to watch funny TV shows. So when I have a very stressful day, I'll watch something funny or scroll. We don't want to scroll all the time, but I'll scroll and just watch like little stupid videos on Instagram, like, like little pranks and people just making memes and taking like quotes from TV shows and making them funny. So for me, that's self-care. That's self-care for me. I love massages, so that's part of, I guess, like the physical self-care, where I usually get fussed out by my massage therapist because she's like, what in the world do you have going on? Because I hold my stress here. So she'll help me out in that way. But that's some of the things that I do. I also drink. I try my best to drink drink water, my recommended amount of water. Eat better, because a lot of times many of us can get brain fog and things like that because of our diet. So trying to eat as best as I can, especially on the go. Sometimes you got to pack little snacks. They got the little 100-calorie fruit and nut packs, and just packing things that are a little bit healthier than, just going to get some French fries or grabbing something quick that may not be healthy. So I want to hear, what are some of your, let's just throwing some things out. Breathing techniques. I pause, breathe in, breathe out. And it may sound very simple, but it does help regulate your nervous system. And really, it's a physical, internal and external benefit to deep breathing. And Ty mentioned earlier, pausing and meditation. There is a mental, spiritual, and physical benefit to doing those types of things. Stretching, again, it helps your mind, it helps your body. So I try to do things to help mind and body as much as I can, because they do work hand in hand. Tony said self-care. She drinks wine and watch football. So it can look different. Yoga in the fetal position, meditate. A lot of people like stretch, like child's pose, child's child's pose, different types of things to help release things like in your hips, stretching your shoulders helps release things. Like there's so many things. And one thing, oh, plug, shameless plug, right? We have the event we have next month, the day after election, so November 6th, we'll be hosting the event Rest Stop, right? Because the event is a movement, so we have rest stops. So the event Rest Stop will include just a safe space for you to come decompress. And we have shifted the time, so I have to update the flyer to accommodate people who may get off at like 4:30, 5 o'clock. We have shifted the time. So November 6th from 4:30 to 8 p.m. we'll be in Suffolk, Virginia at Hub 757, and we'll just have a safe space for you to come decompress following election day. So no matter which way it goes, it's a safe space for you to. We'll have a hydration station, so you'll be able to come in, have tea, have coffee, have some nice little snacks and food. If you want to talk, you can. If you don't have to. I'll drop the link once we get off this. I'll drop the link across the socials where you can RSVP. It's a free event. If you want to invest in a self-care kit, you can. You can get one and you can take it home for you to have like lavender tea, different things that you can take with you to help relax at home. But that'll be Wednesday, November 6th from 4:30 to 8 o'clock. And we'd love for you to come. Again, you can talk or not. You can come in, relax, have some snacks, have some tea, have some coffee, have some water, and just woosah, right? Breathe, meditate. We'll have soft music. It'll be low lighting, very relaxing space. I had to put this shameless plug in. So if you're in the Suffolk, Virginia area, or you will be on that day, we would love for you to join us. Again, it's a free event. We just kind of ask people to RSVP so we can have a good count. So we make sure that we have enough food and snacks and things for everybody. Tony also says she pulls her fingers in between her fingers. So that's releasing. Like you never know how much you're releasing when you're doing those things. So thank you for sharing that. Thank you all. Again, take what you need as far as these self-care practices and try some of them. And all these things, life is trial and error, right? You try it doesn't work, fine. Try something else. Just take care of yourself. And this is one of my favorite quotes, and we've actually built one of our event previous series on this. Is caring for myself is not self-indulgence, it's self-preservation, and that is an act of political warfare. So this is by the amazing Audre Lorde, and that is just saying that taking care of yourself is not something that you do to indulge yourself or something that you necessarily do to. It's not simply to take care of yourself, but it's an act of preserving you, right? Mind, body, spirit, soul. And it's an act of political warfare, right? So politics, the world, whatever, will have you thinking you just got to go, produce, hustle. You need to take care of yourself. So if you got to pause to hustle a little while to take care of yourself, that is you taking care and doing what you need to do in the present to win the future. I need to take care of myself and rest up today to win the future. We see many athletes, right? They practice, but they also have days off from practice because they know that their body has to recuperate and rest. So you can't practice every day and go to the game and then practice every day after the game. There has to be a space where you rest to care for yourself and preserve yourself and not overdo it with stretching your muscles and doing all these things, because you will end up tearing yourself down. So we want you to preserve yourself, not tear yourself down. And lastly, our last question for the night is, how do you think our community can do a better job of taking care of each other and staying strong? So we talked a lot about self-care, looking out for yourself, being good to yourself, but we don't want to negate the fact that we live in community, right? We operate in community. So whether you live alone or live with other people, whether you work from home or you work in a group, whether you are part of a community organization, but you're the leader or you're part of it, and sometimes you feel like you're by yourself, you have community all around you, whether you choose or allowed to participate in it or not. So how do we create greater opportunity, or how do we do a better job of helping one another, of creating strong community bonds, of collaborating, right? We talked about that before previously as well. How do you think, right? So there's no right or wrong answer here because it's solely based on you and your observances and your experiences. How can our community do a better job of taking care of each other? Right. And one thing that I think of, and again, we shouted out Florida in the beginning. So Mexico, Florida, all these places that um, are supposed to be affected by Hurricane Milton. One of the things that's being said is people need to leave, people need to go, people need to do this, right? We also have to take into consideration that everybody doesn't have the means to leave. Everybody doesn't have a place to go to. Everybody doesn't have a vehicle or money for a train ticket or a plane ticket to get out of harm's way. So that's an example of community where we see now, governors and mayors of other states and other cities saying, if you need a place to go, you can come here. If you need space to hold these type of things, this space is available to you. If you need help, this community organization is who you can reach out to, right? So we see now community showing up because often we make blanket statements and forget like everybody doesn't have access to all the things. Like some people can hop in the car and leave now. If you don't have a car, it's kind of hard for you to get out of the city, or it may be harder. There may be some barriers, right? Because the city bus only goes so far. The train costs money. Planes cost a lot of money. Like these things, buses may be booked up already, right? So what does that look like? As far as community doing a better job. And sometimes, even on a smaller, more local scale, that's just you being a good neighbor. Right? That's you looking out for people and giving somebody an umbrella, helping them get to a dry space, right? At school, shutting the door, opening the door for somebody. Something as simple as that is us being a good neighbor and being part of a community where we look out for other people. It's like, example, earlier today, my daughter cheers for middle school, and their games are like $4, which is such an odd number. But at any rate, and you have to pay in cash. Um, so it's like nobody carries cash, and $4 is such a weird amount. Like, can we do 5? Or like such a weird amount. So part of me being part of community day, it was this guy. He had cash. He only had a 20. Right. Granted, I had $5. Right. He had 3 ones and a 20. And the guy was not letting him in the game. The guy that was taking money, because it was so early, he didn't have enough change to give him back change. So I was like, hey, sir, what do you need? Like, here's $1. Because we're community and you're probably coming to see your kid play and you just assume they can have change if they taking ones, right? Or they taking money, paper money, they gonna have change. But they didn't. So as part of community, I'm like, sir, you can have this $1 so you can get in. Granted, he had the money, right? But he didn't have it how he needed it in that moment because the guy didn't have change. So I'm like, here's $1. He was like, thanks. Why? I'm not boasting about it because it's $1. However, what I'm saying is part of us taking care of one another is, even if it appears that somebody may have more, even if it appears that somebody may be in a different situation, or somebody may be in different areas or connected in different areas, we're still community, so we're still one. So what may affect one person affects us all in some way. It often trickles down. So we don't want to forget people that we may not think about all the time. We have to find ways to invite them into community as well. So try to think about, this gonna sound crazy, right? But try to think about the people that you don't think about, right? And how could you show up more for those people, right? Or think about the people that you already recognize are often left out. And what could we do as a community, not to give charity, not to necessarily donate, but what can we do as a community to bring those voices into the conversation and to let them know that they're valued without being demeaning and keeping and maintaining dignity? How do we invite those voices in? And how do we stay strong as a community? Because we need each part, no matter where you are or what your background is. So that's just something to think about. And then the last quote for tonight, I had to bring in all the womanists and theologians and the scholars and the cultural critics, because what we do when we go into the deep is we challenge what is culturally acceptable, and we challenge what's right before us, because we know that the future can look different. So Bell Hooks, another amazing woman. Love as the practice of freedom. This is the way we can make the world we long for. So that's loving on yourself. That's loving your neighbor. That's taking accountability. That's challenging things that are already in place. That is taking action and not just using words. That is all encompassing, right? Love is all encompassing. So that's holding others accountable as well as yourself. That is showing up for people. That is all encompassing. So that's how we make the world we long for, by taking the action, by doing the things, by staying true to our word, by being held accountable, and for thinking about those other people may not always think about. So as we think about that, I hope that this has just put us, if nothing else, in a space where we see where we are, we see what's happening in the present, but we're also thinking about how we sustain moving forward. So that's taking care of yourself, that's speaking truth to power, that's reframing how you talk to yourself, how you see yourself, and what you think about yourself. And that's also being able to create systems and things and practices to sustain where you want to go. So you may not be there yet, but celebrate the progress that you're making, right? You may not know what self-care looks like for you yet, but try it, right? So try it, speak it. I'm gonna take care of myself, and then see it. How am I gonna do that? Meditate on that, think about that, stretch on it, get a good night's rest, drink some water, and know that right now is very real and it is the present, but this is not where you'll always be. So I hope that you will continue going into the deep with us. We will be right back here, same place, same time, next Tuesday, 9 p.m. Eastern time. And again, I'll post that new flyer for our rest stop, but I hope to see you in person in Suffolk, November 6th, or in Portsmouth on November 13th. We will see y'all soon. Thanks for joining us for the event.